Why are you a Christian? This is an incredibly important question. I want everyone to listen up. If someone were to come up to you and ask, why are you a Christian? How would you respond to that? Would you have to think? Would you need to pause? In the face of the tragedies that are happening in our world today, in the face of Orlando, Florida, and the absolute nonsense that's going on with people who say they're of God, do you know the world lumps us with them as well? There are believers and non-believers to most of the world. And so what happens, what happened in California several months ago, what happened in Orlando, what's happening in Istanbul, they look to Christianity as part of the problem because we believe in God. And so if individuals come up and say, why are you a Christian? Are we able to answer this? I'm going to tell you right now, I am a Christian. And one of the greatest reasons why I'm a Christian is because I have had a very personal, I have been personally moved by Jesus Christ. I know He's in my life. You want to know one of my primary, results of this? I'm standing in front of you. There's absolutely no reason that I should be up here right now speaking to you. It is because Jesus is at work in our world, and He has personally moved me into faith, into pastorship, with all the wonderful little kindnesses that this congregation has given. But beyond this, and that should always be an answer from Christians as one of them, but I have many reasons why I am a Christian. And one of the main reasons, other than this personal movement that Christ has made in my life, is the fact that Jesus Christ offers the most compelling, the most complete, the most authentically human way to live. There has been no one on the face of this planet that has brought such a compassionate, such a complete and compelling way for us to live ever. Not before His time and not after. It is in our continuing sermon series that we come across one of the reasons why I am a Christian. And when people ask, why are you a Christian? This is one of those items that I bring up. It is kindness. It is something that is completely lacking in our world other than when God teaches us how to do it. Other than when God brings it in as a gift, because these are gifts of the Spirit. These are fruits of the Spirit. And so today as we continue on in this sermon series, I would like to answer the question, why am I a Christian, from the point of view of kindness? I'm going to take a look and see what God has to say about it, because without kindness, I don't think anyone in this room would be a Christian. I don't think our country would ever have been considered Christian. And I certainly don't see any future in our faith without this wonderful gift of kindness. And so, let's look through this complete and compelling way for us to live. How God deals with us and why it's so important for our world today. So, starting off. It's an interesting thing following Christ. It really is. And He comes out swinging when it comes to kindness. He turns everything upside down and what our human nature would say. Following Christ, especially when it comes to kindness, moves us to love our neighbors and our enemies. Let me say that again. To love our enemies. That is in complete disagreement with so much of our world. When someone wrongs you, I'm not talking about your frenemies or people who annoy you. I'm talking about your enemies. Proven, validated, time and time again. Love your enemies. It is quite a request. And when Jesus was teaching this, even in His time, there were so many, Nicodemus, so many of the leaders, people hearing it. I wish I could have been there when He was teaching it, to say, love your enemies. Oh yes, I've heard that, John. We need to love our enemies. Yeah, try and live it out. It's hard. Our human nature wants to strike out. We want to respond. We want to deal with it. But God calls us to not only love our family and our friends, but to reach out in love to our neighbors and our enemies. This is something completely radical and was ushered in by Jesus Christ when he came. We read in Luke chapter 6, 32. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Now, I'm going to stop here and say Jesus had a couple of reasons for saying what he's saying. One of them was, don't try and earn your way to heaven. There is no secret that you can buy off the shelf. There is no process or amount of things you can do to overcome who we are. And so Jesus is going through all the ways that we think we're going to earn our way despite ourselves or try and work our way to heaven and all of this nonsense. And so Jesus is coming in and saying, there is no trick to this, folks. There is no magical set of instructions or this novel that you're going to buy. It comes down to one thing. So let's continue. If you love those who love you, what credit is that of you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? In other words, you get no credit for any of that. It makes no difference before God. Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to be paid, what credit is that of you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But, Jesus says, now here's the trick. I want you to be good to those who love you. I want you to love those who are your friends. But this is where the rubber hits the road. What makes Jesus different, which makes Christianity so different. But love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Do we lend to our friends expecting nothing back? Do we lend to those comrades expecting nothing back? It's difficult to give away something that we have rights to, that belongs to us, and not get recompense for that. It's hard, even to our friends and loved ones. Matter of fact, it's not really suggested to give loan to our loved ones even. I mean, what are you talking about here, Jesus? Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great. Then you're moving in the right direction. Christ is compelling us into something completely different. And you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Now, at this point, who do you think he's talking about? He's not talking about enemies and unbelievers anymore. Who is he really talking about now? I want you to be kind and love your enemies, because who does he have to deal with every day? It's at this point he goes, remember who he has to deal with. Even God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Now, we have a right to defend ourselves. We are called to defend the innocent of the world, to find the evil of this world, to pursue it, to contain it. There's no question God calls us into that, and we have the right to do that. But when we engage the world around us as Christians, we do not blow up buildings, we do not shoot down people, we do not use force. It is strictly forbidden by God, our God, the one true God. And when we see this madness in the world, and other people lump us up to that, oh, that really frustrates me. Because God clearly says we are to engage the world differently, without question. So don't ever let them lump them together, ever. That is why I am a Christian. And it's because of Jesus and his kindness on the world, his kindness with us. And so God calls us in this new world of kindness to engage the world and even to engage our enemies and to love them. That is so hard sometimes, all the time. And he asks us to do it in an interesting way. See, following Christ, especially with kindness, means that he's going to challenge us to sacrifice something of ourselves for other people. To sacrifice something of ourselves for other people. When I bring up sacrifice, it's very interesting. I see this in our confirmands a lot. I get to be with them for years, and you get to hear the real thoughts of some kids. And when kids think of sacrifice, what do you think they think of? They think of big things. Am I going to be nailed upside down to a cross someday, literally? They think big sacrifice. In order to sacrifice, it's big things. This is the 4th of July, and so we think of military. I've served. Those in this room are serving and have served. And certainly, that is a picture of an ultimate sacrifice, right? Trust me, there are easier ways to almost qualify for food stamps than join the military. It is a sacrifice. No question. My son just got done last week with the week-long cadet training program down in Grand Island with the State Patrol. And he was reminded, and so were we at the end of the week, about sacrifice, what it means to take your own life and put it in a place of someone else's to protect them. That's sacrifice, and we see that in our officers. But what Jesus is talking about, and that certainly is it, comes down to something very interesting. It's something even more. It's where sacrifice truly lives in our world. It is in the everyday, ordinary occurrences of life that sacrifice truly shows itself. And what sacrifice really means is that you're giving up something that truly, honestly belongs to you, that no one has claim on, that really belongs to you. You have rights to it. You do not have to give it away, and yet you do. It's so easy to think like this. Well, you're going to have to give up your car, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice. No. What God says is, there's going to be a piece of you, and by the way, God gives you everything in this world. It belongs to Him. There will be something in you that you're going to have to give up, that you're going to have to love someone. You're going to have to sacrifice for those around us. And it isn't some big thing, though it might be, as much as it is opening a door for an expecting mother. It could be scooping one more driveway when you don't have to. It could be giving away food that you may need. It's an interesting thing, sacrifice. And I don't know what it will be in your life, but it usually, again, comes down to those everyday, ordinary occurrences. And they all add up. We read in Philippians how important it is for us to engage the world this way. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, Paul says, if you've gotten anything out of this congregation, anything out of the friendships around you, if you have any comfort from His love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Is that not a better verse for us today than ever? I cannot tell you how motivated we are at thinking, what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? The thought that we would consider others better than ourselves. I rarely run into that. I do, but the mindset of our world today has nothing to do with that. What do I get out of it? If I give, that means I get something back, right? No, that means you give. But in humility, consider others better than ourselves. Each of you should look not to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. That's something really big, and that causes sacrifice. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to give you an example of how difficult this is. Sometimes we try and help people. Sometimes we try and do the best we can. But without God and His kindness, it's difficult. We want to help those around us, yes, but we don't want to hurt them either. And so truly sacrifice something of ourselves takes time. It takes commitment. Like we talked about, it takes patience to do the right thing. But God has called us to think of ourselves as second. And that's something that only Jesus pronounces. When He came into the world and did this, wow, was that huge. And it changed the world. It absolutely changed the world. That is why I'm a Christian. It's because in kindness we sacrifice something of ourselves to those who do not deserve it. nor did not earn it, and I expect nothing in return. Does that sound like someone who's worked for us? What did Jesus do? And so he says, if you've gotten anything from Christ, then be like-minded. Do that for those around you. Okay. Oh, love my enemy. Sacrifice, which means I'm not just going to give of my excess. Oh, well, I don't use that anymore. Take it. Sacrifice means something, I'm giving out something that's hurtful here. This means something a lot to me. But it also means, in the end, that following Christ calls us to live a life of love. It is a totally, completely different mindset to engage the world this way. And others have talked about this. You've heard of other movements and love, and we had the 60s, live in love, and we've had these moments in our world where we've talked about this. Christ brought it into the world. He engaged the world with it. It was how he dealt with us in love, and it changed everything. You want to know what this looks like? This is how profound Christ and his teaching has been to our world today. It has touched more than half of our world. More than half. Throughout the last 2,000 years, many of the great social causes and movements toward compassion for others have sprung up because of Jesus Christ and his followers. I'm going to bring up a couple. I'm not about social justice all the time. I'm about Christ. But Jesus has brought in this kindness, this love, and it has caused so much. Underlying the civil rights movement in our own country were believers in Jesus Christ and his teachings. The end of apartheid in South Africa was because of Jesus Christ and his believers and his teachings. The movements to end slavery around the world, which we are still battling, the primary source and teaching comes from Christians, believers of Christ, and those who believe in his teachings. And if we want to get away from those grandiose things, from Mother Teresa's and all those who have engaged in the world around us because of Jesus Christ, let's look at our own country. Do you want to know the number of schools that were started in our country through Christians? As our country emerged, it is untold how many hundreds, if not thousands, of schools have been started from Christian churches who wanted their believers to know how to read the Bible. And so in the middle of every community was the church and then the school. Thus, public education even had its beginning. We have this wonderful engagement in the world around us. And if that's not it, think about the hospitals, about caring for the people. Do we have any hospitals in our city named after Christian believers? We have a ton of hospitals. I'm not going to name them. This isn't an advertising podium. Whether they do it or because of faith or not anymore, I don't know. But they were founded by believers in Jesus Christ and his teachings. And don't even get me started on the missions in the city alone. Salvation Army, Open Door Mission, on and on and on and on, who engaged this community around us because of Christ, his believers, and his teachings. It is this complete and compelling way to live. And yet it's so authentically human, because does he expect us to do it perfect? Is there some level we need to attain? Does he forgive us every day for trying to be kind to others? We read in Proverbs 3 this wonderful teaching. Now, this is quite a bit older than what we consider the New Testament. My son, do not forget my teaching, this wise old fox is passing on. But keep my commands in your heart. It's not this external stuff. It's about sacrifice. It's about love. It's engaging. For they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity. Now, when I hear those things, my ears perk up in the Bible. What? Prosper? Live long? Star Trek stuff? What do we got here? Let love and faithfulness never leave you. So it's not investing well, or staying out of debt in the end, or building up assets, or taking a pilgrimage once a year. What was that again? Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Faithfulness can also be kindness. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. They knew it then, and Jesus ushered in an age. Now, that is why I am a Christian, because of your kindness and how God has called us to engage the world. Jesus said that his followers would be known by their... I'm going to say this one more time. Jesus and his followers would be known by their love for one another. It was that simple. He was very plain and clear. It is a love for one another, a love that is a reflection of God's love for us, a love that he calls us to live in this world. And I'd like to end with this scripture as we go today. It is the reason I found the I Am Second band as a reminder to me all the time of who's in charge, and that I need to be kind and consider others more important than me. I've got several of these up here if you want them, and they point to a wonderful website for non-believers to find out who Jesus is. But it is a constant reminder of this passage, Ephesians 4:32. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. Remember, it's authentically human. Good luck being kind out there, folks. You're going to need a lot of forgiveness. Just as in Christ, God forgave you. And so all in the end that he's calling us to do is to return to those around us in the same way he's given to us, how he's lived in our life. And that's pretty profound and powerful. That it'll take all your life and some to figure this one out. But we engage the world. We engage the world.